So we have a quick update on Chris Cash, who's been accused of being an agent for the Chinese Communist Party working in the British Parliament, in the House of Commons. Now, first things first, if your name is Cash, it's probably best if you don't become a spy and get cash from foreign nations. It's a little bit obvious, but he's been accused. He has now been officially charged. Finally. Do you remember when we mentioned this story to you guys? It was a few months ago. It was back in, I think it was August, September, when the investigation started. Now we finally have CPS. Finally, the Crown decided to charge him. Now, the whole thing is escalating badly because it's affecting our MPs. Alicia Kearns, obviously, his former boss. This is his picture. Chris hanging out in Parliament with a few Chinese people because he had connections there. And on the left, you can see Alicia, his former boss. And he also has connections with Tom Tugendhat, another Tory MP who claims to be very much against the Chinese Communist Party. He's been speaking out against them, but he might just be innocent, by the way. Obviously, Tom Tugendhat, because, he's fighting against CCP. But he's been associated with Chris Cash because he works in Parliament. And, on certain select committees. It's not a good look. Firstly, it's not really just about our parliamentarians not checking people when they interview. It's also the job of the parliamentary authorities to vet people's backgrounds in order to give them a parliamentary pass. Now, all the stories that we actually talked to you guys about this man, Chris Cash, over the last few months, shows a lot of, let's just say, smoking gun situation, right? But he has connections with China. But he's not the only one, by the way. We have senior politicians with connections to China. Yeah, I know. Some of them are at the top of the government. Having said that, this is not what we have, because we initially had the newspapers and the authorities having a bit of a clash in terms of whether they should name this person a few months ago. Then they said, well, it's in the public interest to name this spy suspect. And then they obviously, the Times named him, mentioned his name and all the details. And since then, everything has been kicking off anyway. Interestingly enough, the mainstream media are not really interested in this story. Obviously, Guido has been updating us on this, but BBC and Sky, they're not really scrutinizing what's going on in terms of the latest updates, but we will keep you guys posted on Tousi TV. First things first, let's go to Ian Duncan Smith, the former leader of the Tories, that said, it is a remarkably dangerous situation. This is a guy who allegedly spies on behalf of the Chinese Chinese government in the place where decisions are made and sensitive information is transferred. Well, that's true, Parliament. It is vitally important that he is named because many people who came into contact with this individual will be unaware that he has been arrested on suspicion of espionage. There is a clear public interest. Then we had the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Alicia Kearns, who was his former boss apparently, telling the Times that, very defensively, that, these suggestions that Alicia should have breached all police and intelligence requests and not to discuss, obviously, the case could only come from individuals with zero understanding of legal investigation and intelligence work. Technically, that's true. But at the same time, why is it that nobody internally is actually speaking out against this? Because a lot of people always assumed if we have a spy from China, they're going to have to look Chinese. And to be fair, even when they look Chinese, even when they were actually Chinese, they still allowed them to go in. Do you remember the few people who we already exposed onto CTV over the last few years? The ones who were connected to both Tory MPs and Labour MPs. Barry Gardiner was one of them. So whether they are ethnically Chinese or not, seems like our establishments are a little bit complacent at best, let's just say, about the whole threat.